Okay, so we're good to go. So thanks everyone for coming along. This is a really exciting session that I think we've got going today. We're going to be joined by Melissa, who's the product design manager at WorkHuman, and she's going to be talking to us specifically about prompt engineering with Chat GPT. And I think this is a really interesting area because at a time where we're talking about AI and machine learning and how that can influence our work as designers, I think something that we're all interested in now and we want to hear more about is, okay, I know these tools exist, but how do I use them and how can I use them effectively? And I think, this really has a parallel, in my opinion, with the point where people started using search engines like Google, and next they were trying to figure out, okay, but how do I use Google well? And similar to, how you might construct keywords in certain combinations to find what you need. I think Melissa's going to really nail down the science of how you can make AI work for you, as opposed to, you struggling and trying to find what you need and having to work even longer. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Melissa. I'm going to let you share. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this talk.
Anna, cheers, Jamie, for inviting me to Friends of Figma today. And I'm also really excited about the topic. So I'm more of a fan around AI. And I think I'm using it every day just for, okay, I have an idea. What can I do with this? And how can I refine it every day? So let me just share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we have a small audience today because it's a lovely sunny day outside in Dublin. So we'll keep it small in the audience, but I also want to have a conversation with you guys. So I would ask people who are here, has anybody used Chat GPT in general, like so far?
Yeah, but like very basic stuff, writing emails and stuff.
Have you used it for work so far?
Not really, because my company is kind of putting the parameters for how we can use it, but I use mostly for personal stuff.
So really it's okay if you're doing it for personal projects, or if you're thinking about incorporating in the workplace. What we're going to be covering today really are all the principles and all the basic types of prompts that, if you know how they work, it can really cover the vast majority of use cases that you could potentially think of. And it's really important to understand those principles, because then you can apply it to anything. We're going to cover primarily ChatGPT today, but ChatGPT is not just conversational. You could apply it for automation. You could apply it for multiple set of tasks that you want to automate, and then you want to bring the technology with a third-party application and so forth. So it's a very versatile way of using the tool. But today we're primarily going to use ChatGPT. We're going to talk about prompt engineering, which is kind of the term that's come up lately, and how to do that properly. And then we're going to take a real use case with Amici Pizza. It's a fictional project that we're going to use today, just to really see what we can work out for the client. So there's going to be a set of design deliverables that we're going to leverage ChatGPT with. And we're also going to make a bit of use of Midjourney for mood boards, for architectural photography, and also use of Google Sheets with the ChatGPT plugin. And hopefully we can get to a group chat, because it would be great to talk about the topic and how you perceive the topic. How would you apply it in your day-to-day? And let's just get started. So what is ChatGPT? So we all know about OpenAI at this point, this research lab founded in 2015 in San Francisco. It's currently led by CEO Sam Altman. But I think, just not going into the detail, their main mission is to create products with artificial general intelligence that are accessible to all of humanity, and they're meant to be beneficial. They're meant to be of assistance. They're not meant to, take over the world or anything like that. It's actually to augment your capacity and your skill set day to day. That's mainly their mission. And Chat GPT is one of their products. They have a whole set of products, and we're going to also use Playground for the chatbot in the end. But Chat GPT is primarily it stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, and it's a large language model that is primarily instruction fine-tuned. And it also offers, well, primarily it's a conversational assistant. And but it does have a huge data set, data knowledge set that you could ask general knowledge, just open-ended questions, and it would be giving you really interesting information. It does have very high contextual understanding because it leverages from a type of prompt called chain of thoughts prompting. And it's very versatile with its application. So it doesn't only need to be used for chatbots, but it could be plugged into third parties for creating, data, lists, or, analyzing, extracting data, just giving you some sort of output. It doesn't need to be a conversation as such. What is prompt engineering specifically? That's what we're going to be covering in today's session primarily. Prompt engineering is the process of designing and crafting questions or statements given to Chat GPT as input in order to get specific and desired outputs. So our aim as prompt engineers should be to create responses, so the output, that are relevant and accurate depending on how we wrote the prompt. And we also, as prompt engineers, should understand the model's limitations because there are still many of them. And if you're not aware on how to double check or proof edit everything you do, you could get into more trouble as opposed to coming to a solution. So you have to understand the model's limitations. Obviously, this is always changing. So hopefully we'll get to a model where all of these limitations are highly mitigated. And finally is, you also need to be using your critical thinking skills to evaluate and iterate on prompts, because most likely the first prompt you generate is not going to be very impactful nor useful. So you're going to have to use this iterative process for creating your prompts. These are the types of prompts that we're going to be using, and that's what I mean, that they cover most of all the use cases you could potentially think of. I mean, thousands and thousands of them. The sky is the limit. But primarily, they all come from these types of prompting. And the first type of prompting is called zero-shot prompting, which is the most basic one. It's kind of like an open-ended question. You can frame it as a question or just as a statement. And you're not feeding any context or knowledge yourself, no sampling text. You're just asking a question and then asking the model to take from its own knowledge base and spit something out back to you. So let's just go with one example. It could be something like, okay, open-ended question. What are some sustainable design ideas for packaging? I don't know. You tell me, right? Or I can frame it in a statement sentence or an instruction, a request of some sort. Provide me a list of sustainable design ideas for packaging. And then it might give me, the list would be like bullet points of sort. So depending on whether I use a question or a specific type of instruction or statement, the formatting of the output might be different. The second one is role prompting. And you probably heard about this one a lot, where you ask the system or the model to act like a specific persona because it will leverage its own lexicon, its own glossary of terms that adhere to that persona. So for example, a doctor has a specific knowledge and types of words that he will use, a special type of expertise that is very different from a teacher or from a solicitor, a lawyer. Everybody has their own way of talking of certain terms, certain areas of knowledge. So in this instance, we're going to ask the system to act as a product designer, and then we're going to give it a question or statement. So role, act as a product designer, and then I give it an instruction. Explain the concept of design thinking and share a real life example applied to a successful product. And that's going to generate a response that is going to feel it's coming from a product designer itself. And then few-shot prompting, essentially, it's slightly different from a role prompting. So instead of giving it a role to the system or model, what I'm giving it is a context or setup. And I'm basically saying, I'm giving some sort of situational context just to feed into the system first. And then based on that context, I may have a question or a statement or instruction or requirement. So let's look at this example. The context or setup may be the product design system team is working on a new smart home device. And then I'm taking a question. What are key UI considerations for controlling multiple connected devices at home? And that way, I gave the build up and then the question, and it will respond quite differently because it's going to be as relevant as the context I give it. And finally, the one we're going to use the most today is really leveraging all the other types of prompts, but it's called chain of thoughts prompting. And this is essentially what Chat GPT is doing. You're giving it not just one prompt, but you're giving it a series of prompts. And the second prompt will probably build from the first prompt, and the third prompt will build from the second and first prompt. So you're building a knowledge base on its own, and it's going to formulate relevant responses based on everything that you fed before. So it's very important that when you go into ChatGPT itself, sorry, I'm just going to change this a little bit. I just want to show you. When you are creating a chat, you want to make a chat around one specific topic. So if I were trying to, make some research around France, let's just say that's the topic I want to research about, or I want to create content for, it's all going to be, around, let's talk about France. It's going to create a title here, and anything you want to ask or have a conversation or a setup or all your prompts, you keep it in the same chat, because then it's going to give you a lot more rich response or output because you are keeping it all in one place. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about chain of thought prompting. So in this example, our setup is prompt 1. We are preparing a talk for design students in college. So explain the concept of design thinking and its relevance for problem solving. And then it's going to give me a response, right? I just enter and it's going to give me a whole response. Now in prompt 2, I want to build up, right? So I'm going to say, based on your previous response, now share a real life example where design thinking, is relevant and blah, blah, blah. And it will give me another response. So it's all build up. And that's the chain of thoughts prompting. I don't know if I should pause for questions, Jamie, or are we good to keep going, guys? Everyone okay?
So far, so good. I haven't gotten any questions in chat. If anyone has any questions so far, feel free to shout.
All good, guys? Okay,
I think we're good. Yeah.
Cheers. Okay, I'll expand this a bit. And yeah, so let's start with the basic principles. So there's just 2. I'm not going to bore you with more, but really there's just 2 principles. One of them is to write clear and specific instructions on your prompt. This is an example of a really, really bad prompt. So what I'm saying here is design something amazing. And the tool in response said, sure, let's design something, I'm assuming it's a digital product. Can you please provide me with some information about purpose, target audience, just give me features, requirements, and so forth. The system cannot generate anything meaningful because I haven't really given anything very specific. So if we were to rewrite this in a better way, we could do something like this. We could give it some context. So it's a bit like the setup with the few-shot prompting. And we could say, okay, we are designing a mobile app that will allow users to track their daily water consumption and receive reminders to stay hydrated. So keep in mind the following user persona as reference. Now, as part of writing clear and specific instructions, if you're going to pull some sample data or text, to inform the model, you should use delimiters. So if I'm saying, look, I have this sample text for this user persona, I'm gonna encapsulate that into delimiters like double quotes, it could be brackets, it could be chevrons, triple ticks, if you will. And then I'm gonna input the text itself. So in this case, my user persona is a health conscious manager in his late 20s and early 30s, who's struggling to remember to drink water throughout the day, especially when he is busy or focused on work. And then I close these quotes. Then I could also go as far as defining some sort of formatting, with the instruction. What's the output that I want? I want it to provide me with a list. And in this list, I'm defining the 3 key main features that can help keep track of his water consumption. So I'm being very specific. I'm being very clear with my instructions. I'm leveraging a type of prompt called few-shot prompting. And, it's going to give me something more meaningful than the previous example that I got, which was, I have nothing for you, because it was just too broad, too general. So if we go into the second principle, is giving the model time to think. You will find that Chat GPT has its limitations. You can actually break down the system if you really try hard. When you're giving something too broad and too generic for it to figure out on its own, it's not going to give you anything either. In this instance, I on purpose created a mega prompt that's kind of coming in the internet a lot lately, like, how to do mega prompts. And they claim that a mega prompt is just going to solve all your problems. So this is a mega prompt that I wrote, and it says, design a highly innovative and groundbreaking product that seamlessly integrates advanced technologies, futuristic aesthetics, and cutting-edge functionalities. The product should cater to a wide range of users across different demographics with features that surpass their expectations and provide unparalleled user experiences. It should revolutionize the industry and disrupt conventional norms, setting a new benchmark for excellence and innovation. Consider incorporating artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, blockchain, blah, blah, blah. And then it came back with the response, apologies for any confusion caused, but I'm unable to fulfill that request. If you have any specific questions or need assistance with a different topic. So I essentially broke the system because I created a mega prompt with extremely broad general terms that can mean many different things to many people. I'm not being specific. I'm not breaking it down into steps, and I'm not giving any instructions. So try to avoid doing something like that, if you will. I'm gonna pause here before. Oh, sorry. I might just mention what a good breakdown of this principle is before we go into the chat. But what you want to do really is break down tasks into simple multiple steps, like we did with the previous prompt for our mobile app for hydration. The next thing you want to keep in mind is to make sure you work out the solution yourself first, and then try and compare it with the model. Sometimes the model may get it wrong, like for very simple reasoning. And it's good to work it out yourself first and then compare it and see what the model thinks and see if you actually agree with the model or not. So in this instance, we were trying to display an error message to users who were using Cyrillic characters in their files. So we wanted to display in the error message, error, the file name cannot contain non-English letters. Try again. But when we were looking at this particular sentence, we were also questioning, should it be non-English letters or should it be the origin of English letters, which is Latin? So the question here was like, should be like non-Latin letters as opposed to English letters? So the question here is this correct? I just want to ensure that what I'm doing is correct. And the system itself, the model said, Yes, actually, the file name cannot contain non-Latin characters. So it did correct English to Latin. So that was good. But then what we notice is that in the output, it changed letters to characters. And we question this because characters is broader than letters. I mean, letters is just, A to Z, but if you include characters, that may be numerical values, that could be special types of symbols and so forth. So we asked again, so why characters instead of letters? Shouldn't it just be letters? And then the model said, auto-corrected itself saying, yeah, you're right, I got it wrong. In this specific context, it should be letters because you don't want to go broader with the character term, which would indicate or encompass a wider range of symbols. So it auto-corrected the file saying, error, the file name cannot contain non-Latin letters. Please try again. So that's what we mean about working out solutions, trying to compare the solutions, and then checking if your conditions are satisfied. So always question the outputs from Chat GPT. And I might just pause here. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat, Jamie, at this point.
Sure. Yeah. Joseph's come in with a question regarding that mega prompt. So in that mega prompt, he saw the word groundbreaking. And is groundbreaking an example of an adjective that's too broad? Does ChatGPT handle adjectives like that well in terms of their potentially abstract nature? Do we have to be conscious of the types of adjectives that we use when we're developing prompts like this?
Yeah, absolutely. Because groundbreaking, for example, it's a great word, but groundbreaking can mean many different things to many different people, depending on your audience, their level of knowledge, background, who's your audience, right? So groundbreaking for me is very different to my husband, for example. Like we would be very, very different ways of thinking and mindset. So if you were to use an adjective like groundbreaking, try to use a few shot prompt there. So I want a groundbreaking mobile app like this type of, app, so it could be maybe Spotify, you're giving a sample of what you consider personally is outstanding or groundbreaking. So give it some samples of what that means. And then the model will be like, okay, so groundbreaking means this to this user. So I'm going to leverage similarity, right? Depending on what you fed me. So, but in general, try to avoid being too broad with your terms, but have more of an objective in mind. Like, what are you trying to get out of the tool? Are you trying to analyze something? Are you trying to summarize something? Are you trying to transform that information? Are you trying to do an extraction of something specific from that information? So yeah, it's just to try and avoid as much as possible. If you need to have it, maybe have one of those adjectives, but definitely to try and avoid bombarding the system with a lot of ambiguous terms. I hope that answered it.
That mega prompt reminds me of a client request. I did have a question though around something you said, and Joe said perfect. That makes a lot of sense. I did have a question around, you said at the end, to question the model or be critical of the output. What happens if you directly challenge ChatGPT's output, or have you done that before? And does it respond in any kind of way? So if you correct ChatGPT, for example, does it have a capacity to reaffirm its answer?
It could have a capacity of agreeing with you because of the guidelines that it's been embedded. Where it's almost like, okay, if the user is saying it in an affirmative way that this may be true, I may need to consider that as a preference too. So another way of avoiding, that bias of being in favor to the user as opposed to the model itself is that you may want the model to work out its own solution first and then compare it to your solution. There was an example I saw from another course around prompt engineering, and they were referring to a student's solution to a math problem. So the teacher wanted to grade that solution in the tool. So it basically had its own bias, you know, like I believe this is correct, and then put the solution in, and the model said yes, it's correct. But it wasn't correct. There was a small nuance to the solution that it wasn't broken down properly. So it wasn't actually correct. So the way the teacher should have said is like, this is the actual math problem. That, you know, just no bias, no sample texting. Like, this is it. You work it out, the solution, and then you work out your solution separately. And then you may feed into the system, this is what I thought. Why is mine wrong? Why is yours right? And then it may give you a description as to why it believes it's correct, you know, as opposed to your solution. So it is basically testing different things, but you don't, that's why I think a lot of the use cases have revolved around marketing primarily, because marketing is a different type of language. You know, you're not trying to solve complex problems with math or with journalistic writing. You know, it's a little bit more creative in that space. So you don't have to be as factual, for example, like you would be with a scientific problem or a math problem. So it's just something to consider what use cases you give it.
I guess it's like it's a cooperative relationship rather than a subordinate relationship where you're saying do this and expecting a response. It seems to work best when it's kind of a collaborative effort.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely, Bill. That's why the conversational aspect is so important with the tool, because if you were using a different interface like Playground, and I'm just going to show you here really quickly, Playground would, you know, when you look at this is exactly the same model used with Chat GPT. It's Da Vinci right here. Here's the model. But the interface is not telling me this is conversational. It almost tells me like there's just an input and then submit an output, and that's it. So the reason why ChatGPT has its interface slightly different is because it's trying to get you to have a conversation. It doesn't want you to just, sorry, I have to move the the faces on the bottom of the screen. Oh, it's Zoom.
You're good. We can see just your screen.
Oh, you can see. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So you can see how the interface is inviting you to have a conversation as opposed to just input text like Playground. They essentially both do the same thing, but you wouldn't know as a user that Playground can actually capture conversations. It's just not very intuitive because of you know, this big block of text. So yeah, it's just something to keep in mind. They want you to do the chain prompting because it's about building, conversing, brainstorming, that type of behavior. I hope that answers questions.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'll keep going just in the interest of time. And let's go into the next part, which are, so we were talking about you know, question or setup, or instruction or request. So these are some of the instruction methods that you can use in the types of prompts. So you may have some sort of description. It could be a product description, it could be a news article, it could even be a book title that you're aware of, maybe from, you know, historical sources, and you're asking the tool to summarize that. So just summarize this large piece of text, because we really don't have time to read too much, too long. So I need a summary of this. Another good use case is that you could go to YouTube, for example, and then you could, you know, show the transcript there, and then ask the tool, can you summarize this transcript? You know, what was this YouTube video about? And it will do a really good summary for you as well. So just, you know, be creative in terms of instances where you think maybe at work or in your own personal projects where you could potentially use this type of method. You know, I want you to summarize X. The next type would be around classification. So, you know, how we label types of text or types of news. I mean, we're always looking for ways of categorizing these buckets of information or types of information. So just think of it like, okay, what is this type of, you know, document? Can you group them in ways that I will understand it? And I'll do a really good job at that. And if you haven't done so, I think, Jamie, you told me you use this a lot. It's really just to spell check and grammatically check how you're writing something. Maybe you're writing a letter and you want to double check, edit, proofread it. It's very similar to Grammarly in this regard. So you could, you know, can you help me double check that I wrote this properly? And it will do also simplification very well in terms of editing. And then extracting, you could have a sample text. Maybe it's a product review, you know, from a user. And, you know, it could be something that you copy and paste and say, okay, can you extract the sentiment analysis of this review? Is it positive? Is it negative? It could be data from a survey. Can you extract any metrics specifically from that survey? You know, you can translate those metrics into charts, perhaps, with the transformation method. Then another method would be around expanding. It's really good at expanding. Like you may have a core concept, primarily creative. We already spoke that journalistic, it's not very good because it has limitations in terms of where it generates data from. But you could have a general concept and you can ask it to expand on that concept. It could be around a specific topic. Maybe it's for email marketing. And, you know, you've already said so much, so many times. So maybe you can ask to expand a little blurb that you have and it will do a really good job. You can ask it to format it, right, for a specific type of audience, a specific type of format. And this is exactly what I was going to refer with styling. So styling is referring to the tone of voice that you want to use with the prompt. Who is your audience? It's really good with creative writing as well. So you could say, look, I want you to use the tone of voice of Aristotle or of Shakespeare, you know, or maybe you're a pirate right now. So can you use the language of a pirate, you know, in this chat? And it will do really good job at imitating these personas. So it's around the role prompting technique. And then transformation, it's also very interesting. Like, you know, if you have text, you can transform that text into an output for code, or, you know, it could be an HTML format, a CSV, a JSON formatting. It supports a large number of data formats. And more recently, I've been using it kind of prompting with Chat GPT for a visual output prompt that can be leveraged in Midjourney, which is something we're going to do next, how you can do that. But anyway, transformation is very good. You could just copy the code or copy the table and bring it into a different format where you can properly edit or, you know, do your own review. And then task-oriented is really around the tool can give assistance and recommendations based on I guess a knowledge, knowledge base that you give it. So we're going to do that with the chatbot as one of our exercises, where it's going to be very task oriented. And then what we did with the zero-shot prompting, it's very good at answering questions from its general knowledge, or it could also be from brainstorming. So what do you think about this and why? And, you know, you could just be very philosophical with the tool, if you will. Then if we go into the framework that you should be using for prompts as a prompt engineer, you do want to be quite methodical about how you're treating your prompts. So it's not just about like, oh, I have an idea, let's put it out and then just take that and use it. But you want to try different things. You want to be very experimental with your prompts. So first start with that idea or objective of what you want to generate, right, with the tool, and write it down. It will be your implementation of the prompt itself, and then analyze the results. Are the results really matching what I originally envisioned it would do, or should I try again? And just refine the idea, refine the prompt, analyze it again, keep refining the process until you get to something that truly generates, the outcome of what you want. It is very important that you proofread everything you do. I think there's a danger now that all the integrations that are coming out with Chat GPT 4 and that people are going to want to start to automate everything, they may forget to proofread what the output, right, of these prompts, assuming they're okay. And if they're not really 100% sure that this is, the correct output, they may create more harm by just automating everything without correctly reviewing. So this framework is very important, and it's just being responsible about what your outputs are, how you use these prompts, and so forth. The next thing I wanted to mention was the model's limitations, and I'm pretty sure you're all aware of their limitations. But if you're currently using ChatGPT, it's going to give you the 3.5 model, and that doesn't have any current data after 2021. So if you ask, a couple of questions to ChatGPT, it gives you a lot of responses around COVID because it's kind of still leveraging from that time frame. But ask anything recent, it won't have any recollection really about that, and it could make something up. So that comes to the next bullet point around hallucinations. The tool will hallucinate if it doesn't know something. It may confidently lie to you with something really believable. So in this case, I asked, I made up a medication. Doesn't actually exist, but I said, okay, can you tell me what are the side effects of taking this medication called Aptamazole? And it did say, well, it got better because it did give me in brackets, assuming it exists. But it did say, okay, the potential side effects of this anti-thyroid medication, such as Aptamazole, may include allergic reactions, gastrointestinal disturbances, skin discoloration. So it's a total made up, in the system, but you have to be very aware that this could happen. And sometimes it won't give you this, assuming it exists. And you may believe, oh, maybe it's real. This is just a use case, but yeah, you have to be very, very careful that it doesn't hallucinate, number one, and it's not confidently lying to you about what it's spitting out. It also has difficulty with basic arithmetic and basic reasoning. Like we saw with the error message, that was a basic writing of characters, the use of characters or the use of letters, and then it auto-corrected itself saying, no, you're right, in this particular context, I made a mistake. And it will, be aware that of its own limitations. And finally, before we get into the more practical exercises, you also need to be very conscious around the ethical considerations. So you probably heard about this term called prompt injection. And the idea here is that because these models have been trained with a lot of safety measures, these are users or hackers that are trying to override those safety regulations by confusing the system and then trying to get the system to break those rules or to follow their own instructions. And they're quite malicious in nature. There's a lot of things that happen when they released their first model back in November, where people were, in the second day asking GPT to spit out, the formula for homemade bombs and things like that. So there's a lot of malicious intent, and the system really has been curated to avoid misbehavior. But these hackers try to, override those rules. So don't do prompt injection with the system. Biased behavior. So also you're probably aware that models are trained on, they can be trained on bias. They can learn how to be hateful, how to be violent, how to be unethical. And it occurred, I remember years ago with Twitter, they were trying to create this, model of artificial intelligence, and it was learning really quickly how to hate. Because it was leveraging all the comments on Twitter, and there's a large percentage of comments that are very hateful, very racist. And so it was giving a lot of racist responses in return. So when you're putting anything you put in yourself in your prompts or sampling data, you want to make sure it's all reviewed to be fair, inclusive, non-racist, and so forth. I don't think I have to tell you guys that this is a must-have, but yeah, there may be people who want to generate hateful spam emails, to large audiences and do that in a bulk, and that's really bad behavior. Misinformation, like how do we create like lies that are they may look very real, they may look very believable, but they are completely inaccurate, right, with information. So understanding how things are sourced, how things are explained, if you can put any references, that's very, very important. Mishandling data. It's, I think, obvious to say that if you were coming across sensitive information from other people, you don't want to be putting any sensitive or private information into the tool, like, their address, their phone number, their credit card number, social security number, PIN numbers. That's obviously a big no. Don't mishandle data from other people into the tool. Not giving transparency as well. So it's important that the model understands, I guess the user understands the limitations of the model it's speaking with. So for example, imagine you're using Chat GPT to generate responses around health, acting as an AI agent for a doctor. And this doctor is a robot, but you don't want to mislead people into certain healthcare solutions that are not real. So you need to explain what the knowledge is, what you're interacting with, its limitations, its boundaries. You don't want to lie to people, like we cannot provide you a response just for the sake of it. We just are not equipped with that knowledge. And no awareness. So this is also very important. You should, every time you create automation, if you're leveraging an email automated response with Chat GPT, you want to make users aware that this is Chat GPT or an AI agent that they are receiving an email from, or if it's a chatbot as well, that it's an AI agent. There was an instance where in Michigan State University, there was a person who, there was a generated email from AI where, they basically sent this email as a condolences message for a shooting that happened in this university. And when they received the condolences email, and then at the very end it said generated by OpenAI, I can't see your expressions now, guys, but I'm sure you agree with me that that would be a really inappropriate way of using the tool. You should never use it for such use cases. It was absolutely the wrong way of doing it. So just be mindful that automation doesn't always mean it's a good idea. Oh, I have. Oh, sorry. Okay, Joseph, I have to drop now, unfortunately, but looking forward to seeing the rest. Is everybody okay so far? Before I jump into exercises, is everybody still there?
Yeah, we're here. If anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in. You can also use the chat. We're keeping an eye on the chat. This is like really super informative so far. I feel like I'm taking like a 3-month boot camp in an hour. Like it's just packed with information.
I'm glad to hear it's useful. And of course, it's nice that we have a recording. So, you know, it might be good to pause in certain areas. And we're also going to share all the files, right, Jamie? If people want to see the workbook and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be sharing. If we're comfortable with it, we'll share the files, the slides, and people can access the recording and they can try it out for themselves.
So this is the exciting part, hopefully. We're going into the actual use cases of what we can actually do with the tool. I'm going to have to go really quickly, and I'm really sorry because time does go by sooner than I thought. So we'll try to get through it as quickly as possible because it would be nice to see what your thoughts are. If we covered enough use cases, if you would like to see other topics around this area, just at a community level, what should we be talking about? But anyway, in here in this Figma file, you can find an AI resources link. It's not just around Chat GPT, it's around many other types of AI tools. And there's a couple of directories just to kind of keep you up to date around different types of industry. I really recommend this tool. It's called PromptBox. And if you start creating prompts that you can reuse for other use cases, you may want to save them so you don't have to rewrite them every time. So it's a really nice way of just keeping track of them. And then, you know, you can say, oh, I can use this prompt again for this use case and just go and quickly retrieve it. And just to keep up to date for newsletters, there's the batch from Deep AI Learning, which is more aimed for developers, but it's really, really interesting to see how they keep working on these models, and the AI Exchange. And then I really recommend this course. It's Chat GPT Prompt Engineering for Developers. They're free. They keep updating them with other types of courses as well. So for anybody who's big into trying to really learn how it works with code, it's also very interesting to learn in a deeper way. And let's really go now into our use cases with Amici's Pizza. So all these links are here if you want to go to the exercises. But I just want to give you a sense of how the principles are applied through each one when you go through them, because they're really all from the types of prompts we covered. And then the methods, you know, whether it's expand, summarize, extract, task-oriented, like it's all coming together in these use cases. So let me start. And let's start with the first one. So just in general, the client brief is, we have this fictional client, Jason. He's the owner of Amici's Pizza Takeaway, and he wants to actually start a new restaurant. So he's looking for a new concept for brand messaging. He has an idea of who his target audience is, but he wants, you know, specific, like unique value propositions, tones of voice, and things like that. So let's go first with the brand messaging one. And I think this is really where design thinking can really be applied into ChatGPT. I mean, how you use ChatGPT. So you should try to always start to frame a problem. You know, how might we define a unique value proposition and tagline for this new restaurant? So if you're leveraging user research, you should always try to have interviews, right, with the people you're creating products or services for. In this case, we have interviewed our owner, Jason, and we have this excerpt from the interview. So overall, Amici's Pizza provides guests a nostalgic and comforting experience. When they walk into the door, they will be greeted by a professional team of expert pizza makers who are friendly in nature and connoisseurs of the craft. The restaurant should have a rustic style with a clearly visible wood-fired oven, vintage signage, and an earthy color palette. It is an inviting space where couples and young office people can gather enjoy their favorite pizza, and embrace the cozy ambience of Dublin City. So this really paints a picture of what he wants to provide with his restaurant experience. And now we're going to feed this into Chat GPT, and I mean, guys, you can just go yourselves, you can change this around. But what I want you to see is what type of prompt I'm using. So in this instance, my objective is to define a unique value proposition for Amici. And I already have some sample text. So in this instance, this prompt would be a few shot prompt because I am giving a sample text delimited by quotation marks, and I'm giving it an instruction or a setup, statement. So give me an expanded description based on this excerpt. And here's the sample text. And now it has expanded what Jason is envisioning. And this was the expand method that we saw earlier in the sheets. Now in prompt number 2, this is starting to behave like a chain of thoughts prompting. But in prompt number 2, can you now extract, so that's a different method, right? Can you extract the unique value proposition from the above? Now it's given me a list, right, of different value propositions based on Jason's vision. And now we're sharing this with the owner. And Jason is saying, oh, this is the one that resonates with me the most. Amici's is about memorable and meaningful moments. This restaurant aims to create lasting memories and foster connections amongst guests, whether it's through the aroma of freshly baked pizzas, the cozy ambience, or friendly service. Amici's Pizza provides an environment where customers can relax, indulge, and celebrate the simple pleasures of sharing a delicious pizza. So now what we want to do is so we have a unique value proposition, which essentially is the promise, right, that Jason is giving to his customers. It's the service he provides. But how do you capture that unique value proposition in a tagline? Because you can't really say all of that for people outside, but you can encapsulate that in a more meaningful sentence. So now we're going to ask in prompt 3 a specific instruction, right? So create a table with 10 rows of taglines related to the following value proposition. So this is another few shot prompt because I am giving some context, some setup with the sample text, and I'm also giving it an instruction. And now it's created this this table list of different taglines. And we have shown these to the client. And Jason is saying, okay, the one that represents Amici's Pizza the most is celebrate life's simple pleasures at this restaurant or at Amici's Pizza. And what we're going to do now, let's just go a bit wild. I mean, this is all hypothetical and fictional. But let's just assume he needs translations into other languages. And I don't know if you in your daily work have encountered this situation where something needs to be provided and translated in other languages. So what we're going to do is actually translate this in Google Sheets with a plugin. I'm going to show you right now. It's called Chat GPT it's GPT for Sheets and Slides. And if you wanted to create PowerPoint presentations with this and certain things for documents, you could. But I guess what I wanted to share with you really quickly is that you can essentially, you don't need to go to Chat GPT for this, but you could do it directly in Google Sheets. You could write taglines there. You could do classification inside Google Sheets as well. So if I wanted to understand, these values, what category these values belong to, it could do a really great job at classification, and it would be much quicker as well. You can also tag your data and extract what sentiment it has. So is this food? Yes, it is food because it says chocolate. Or is this positive or negative? Well, it's positive, right? Because it says I love chocolate. So that's also really good use. And then if you want to clean data as well, that would be a really good use case. You know, if I have a stream of data that I just really need to extract, you know, an email, you could do that as well. So let's just go really quickly ourselves into the exercise. And so we already have selected our lovely tagline, which is celebrate life's simple pleasures at Amici's, but I need to translate these into other languages. So the formula, really, guys, it's very simple. But you type, you add the extension first. That's the first thing you need to do. So add-ons, add GPT for Sheets, set the API key. If you don't know where the API key is, you can go into the platform openai.com, and then under user, you can generate or create a new secret key for your API and just copy that. Anyway, but that's more the installation part. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, okay, equal GPT. It activates the actual plugin. And now we're going to say, okay, I want you to use the value of Spanish. Let me try again. So GPT. I want to select this value. This is my prompt. Sorry, first it's the prompt, then it's the value. And then you can also give it temperature. And we're going to talk about temperature more with Playground, but for now it's going to be 1 because I want it to be as close as the original English tagline. And I'm going to do enter. And that should give us, hopefully won't take too long. Are you guys still there?
We're still alive.
You're still alive. It's very warm today, Jamie. It should load a lovely Spanish tagline, but you know it also depends on time of day, how long it takes to load. So yeah, it gave me an error. Lovely.
even Chat GPT has demoitis.
Yes, it does. Is this where? Oh my goodness. Let's see if.
But in terms of that concept of temperature, and I'm presuming it is some kind of concept related to the tool itself. I've never heard this term before.
Yeah, so temperature really, actually, we can read it here. Controls randomness, so lowering results in less random completions. As the temperature approaches 0, the model will become deterministic and repetitive. And then, well, it doesn't give us kind of a contextual one, but I kind of like to give you an example. So let's just do this. Write a tagline for an ice cream shop. You can see the difference. So let's do temperature 0 and submit. Fill down with an ice cream shop, the perfect summer treat. So the ideal, by the way, I did this wrong. Exactly. Let's write it again, but with number 1. Just either type it and then submit. Taste the creamy goodness of an ice cream shop. It's like a bite of heaven. that also is okay. But let's see what happens when you put temperature too. That's where it could get a bit wild and completely random. Let's change that to number 2. Let's submit. Freeze butter, lightly humming sensation, descending scope made. So that's where creativity can get lost a little bit. So you don't really want to go down this route either. And And that's why I think Playground is also a great experimental way of using, instead of only going to Chat GPT, you could also go to Playground and try different models, how they vary, try different modes, because, you know, you could use the chat mode, you can use, you know, other types of examples, because it's mainly trying to train you how would you architect, I guess, an actual application. So it also has a couple of, let me go here. It has a kind of pre-made templates as well that you may want to play with, and it could change the whole interface. So yeah, definitely play with Playground. Very interesting tool. Let's try this one more time. If it doesn't load, I'm afraid we're gonna have to not use the exercise because it's a bit buggy, but it should work. So for example, in this instance, I'm giving the prompt or the instruction, write a tagline, and I'm giving it about a value. So let's see if it does it. So GPT, let's start parenthesis, prompt, value, temperature 1, close the bracket, and load. And it should do it. Yay!
There we go.
Awesome. And then we can just pull it down and it will bring the other values as well.
Oh, that's amazing.
So now we have fashion that doesn't cost the earth for sustainable clothing. We got the headset, so experience immersive sound like never before with our premium headsets. And I don't know what I just did here, so ignore. Delete. Oh no. So yeah, it's a little bit buggy still, I would say. It's not, it's probably something you want to make sure it's not always loading data. So once you get, you know, something that you like, just make sure it's kind of copied just in a text format so you can save that data and it's not always loading the data. But let's try this again. Let's see if it works. GPT, you know, my instruction or prompt is Spanish, and this is the value. This is the temperature. Let's close and let's load that. Yay, it did it.
Oh,
So
awesome.
And now let's just bring that to Polish, Italian, and French. And that should do it as well. There we go. Here's Polish. Here's Italian. Obviously, like we said, double check. You want to make sure you have other sources just to make sure you're happy with, you know, if you know people who actually speak the language. I can tell you I speak Spanish and it does accurately translate it. It's amazing. It's exactly how a Spanish speaker would read it. So very interesting. I
already see like a very obvious use case for this, at least in my specific work, which is, you know, prototyping translations for interfaces. So we have an app and we have a translations file, and I'm currently linking the translations file to the strings in Figma. And if I combine something like that with this translation layer, suddenly I can test a bunch of languages by basically dragging down that whole set, letting it compute it out, and then using the Figma plugin and selecting each data set to then update the whole file with different languages on the fly while we actually figure out how to translate that through a service. But for me to be able to quickly see like, oh, this breaks in Italian, we need to watch out for that before we go investing. Like, this is amazingly powerful.
Definitely. And it saves you so much time. Imagine, like, you know, you're trying to figure out the number of characters for each phrase, you know. Also, that's very important in UI considerations. You know, does this actually work across German, which is a very long language, or, you know, the non-Latin languages as well. So yeah, it's very, very interesting use cases. Cleaning up data, I think it's a really good use case, you know, all the unclean data you get and you can clean it on the fly. So just really look at the tutorial from this particular add-on. It's very, very informative. It's very easy to follow. But anyway, we have a really interesting use case of how to plug Chat GPT and Google Sheets. So just going back to the other exercises, we might not be able to go through everything, so let's speed it up. We have this interior design mood board. So Jason wants to invest in the restaurant with a specific look and feel. And in this instance, he has something very specific in mind. Wouldn't it be great if we could generate a mood board for him, a visual mood board, so he really can see what he should be investing his money in, right? So before he makes this large investment, I want to understand exactly how it's going to look like. So in this particular prompt, this is kind of like the dream of prompt engineering, is to create a prompt that can be reusable for different situations, different contexts. This is not my original prompt, so I won't take credit for it. I learned this through the internet, but it was a very interesting tutorial around, you're trying to bring a specific style that can be repeatable for different use cases. In this case, the style is around interior architecture, photographic compositions, and they all that kind of shares common attributes like composition, camera angles, style, room type, focal point, textures. This is something you could use across any type of photographic composition, and it's repeatable. So in this particular prompt, our prompt engineer mentioned the photographic composition for a pizza restaurant specific, and it's also asking for 10 rows of data. So that's very interesting because now it's going to give me a whole list based on the same attributes for a specific type of visual compositions based on a pizza shop. And I could potentially export this as a CSV format and continue editing, because it's generated ideas of its own, but I might not want to have a retro style at all. Like, I'll never mention that to Jason, right? So I could change this around, or I may want to change the room types that I show in my mood board, so I could also edit that as well. So being able to transform our prompts to something else is very, very powerful as well. So in this case, I asked it to export the table that it generated into a CSV format. And then in the tool, you can just copy that. You could go into something like Visual Studio Code Editor and just create like a new text file, save that as a CSV, and then open it, in Excel or Google Sheets, if you will. But anyway, what I really wanted to do for this exercise is use Midjourney, and I want to showcase you could potentially use that. So let's go from the start. Let's take this prompt. Let's go to Chat GPT, and in here, I'm just gonna paste it, and it's still gonna be a pizza restaurant, and let's see what it does. So it's gonna give me the table now. Oh, it didn't create the table the way I had done it before. So that's interesting. It only created the first row. So this is what I mean about sometimes it will spit out something that you're not expecting, but it's okay because it's still giving me the ideas, right? The values for those ideas. And I could just go and test one in Midjourney. So what do you think? Should we do one?
Yeah, if you have time, this is awesome.
So I'm gonna take just trying to find something interesting. This let's see, fresh herbs, suburban, pizza pub, urban area, neutral tones, contemporary. Okay, let's just take this one. See what it does. So I like this description But now I need to expand this in a visual prompt. So we're going to copy these variables. Or say expand this in sample text. I can't write today. Expand the sample text into a visual descriptive into a visual description. And then remember, I use delimiters. I paste that, I close that, and see what it creates now. Okay, it's generating the whole atmosphere of the room in a really detailed way. And now we're going to take this, we're going to copy it, and we're going to go into Midjourney. I don't know if anybody has used Midjourney yet in the crowd.
I've only used DALL-E.
So I think DALL-E doesn't generate as nice images as you would do with Midjourney's model. I'm not entirely sure what model they're leveraging, but it just seems you can have more control in the actual styling of the images and the quality of them. So I'm still not entirely sure about DALL-E or even Stable Diffusion. I'm still questioning those two, but I'll show you what Midjourney can generate now. So you'd start with a slash and then say something like imagine. That's for every prompt you create. And then you're going to literally paste your description. And then you're going to give it an aspect ratio with 2 dashes. You're going to say AR aspect ratio. And in this case, it's going to be 69 aspect ratio. You could give it any aspect ratio. And let's see what it starts doing. And hopefully it will also won't break here my exercises. But
I remember in the early days of using DALL-E, it produced some pretty horrific images. I'm still scarred by some of them. Like
missing limbs.
Yeah, well, even worse, just like, you know, vacant faces and
Three
like
mouths and one eye. And it starts becoming a bit scary, to be honest. Like, that's something as well. I think that's a whole other presentation around imagery and video and everything you can do in that area with AI. So Chat GPT is so look guys, this is kind of what we created now for Jason based on the prompt. It's very, very interesting, and it was very, very close to what the composition was saying, what the idea was. Just so you understand the versatility of that. So each idea is very unique that it generates. And when you put the prompts in, you can see a completely different style. This was around Scandinavian style. And this one was the same, was leveraging, but for rustic style. So straight away, we've created a mood board with completely different styles for Jason, you know, and he can give a sense of what this restaurant could potentially become. But and then you can always, you know, upscale. Maybe you decide, okay, this one here, number 3. So I'm in B3. I'll upscale number 3, and then you can even, because it's kind of low res, you can remaster that. There's other tools I have in those AI resources where you can upscale images. So if you needed like more for print, because it's kind of giving you a bit of a low res, so you can always upscale the image as well. But anyway, it basically takes this and it will create more variations based on the remastering. But you can see the possibilities of this, of creating a prompt for visual purposes with one specific style. And let's just see how it finishes it. It's almost like it's drawing a painting, kind of in different layers, and now it's like the output of that. So definitely play with, you know, this prompt. Maybe you can come up with other prompts for visual purposes, but that was the case. And I'm going to have to skip through the other exercises, but I just wanted to get to the chatbot because it might be also very useful. Let me just, this was around social media. So for example, creating different posts for different channels and having that in an Excel sheet. So exporting into formats that you can reuse. Then this was also doing a web landing page, generated some text for it. And then it also gave us the CSS, the basic styling for it. So this was just embedded, and straight away we got, I mean, it's not the prettiest, right, sites, but you can see what it's actually capable of, right, giving you HTML and CSS. And let me close these tabs so we can just get to the last exercise. So what I wanted to ensure is that we had, we basically look at the type of content we would do for a chatbot. So in this instance, we won't be using Chat GPT, but we'll be using Playground. And it's a very, very basic way of defining a chatbot. You're going to leverage all of your knowledge from this mini course, and you're going to do some role prompting. So you're going to tell the chatbot who are they, how are they supposed to behave. So in this instance, they are an expert customer support AI chatbot for a gourmet pizza restaurant called Amici's. You will need to provide helpful answers on Amici's pizza restaurant based on the information you are provided. You have an objective, okay, as a chatbot, and your main aim is to get people to make a booking either for a dinner or a special occasion. So if you ask if they need help with anything else, make sure you mention our secondary objective, which is getting people to experience our pizza tasting events. Explain why it is exciting to attend in order to create memorable moments and shareable experiences with their loved ones. If they're not interested, just wish them a good day. And your tone of voice must be warm, inviting, and engaging. That tone of voice came from the social media exercise before, where we were extracting the tone of voice. So it's also something to consider, that this is something I can reuse again and again when creating email communications, social media posts, web landing pages. I have already a predefined tone of voice. And then what you need to do is you need to train the chatbot with your own data set or knowledge base. So in this instance, we need Jason's restaurant details, right? What are the opening and closing hours? What's the phone number? What's the website and the address? What's the full menu with the price range? And we also need to understand what are other types of services he offers. So he offers special occasions because he's trying to create memorable events. And he's also offering pizza tasting events as a third service. And then the third step is to provide your chatbot some context of how you want it to behave. So in this instance, I might start myself recreating the conversation with a couple of samples. I may say, okay, hello, I want to make a dinner reservation for tonight. And then I'll pretend to be the chatbot myself, saying, okay, good day, absolutely, I'll be able to assist you with your reservation. You're obviously encapsulating, right, the tone of voice in every response. And you may want to have certain edge cases like, hey, there's no gluten-free pizza, you know, in case they ask for that, just have this type of response, you know, that's not available in the menu, but maybe offer something alternative. So let's just go and check it on Playground just to see if it works. I just want to like literally copy and paste all of that text in here. So that's why you are going to switch this to chat. And this is where you're going to feed the system with all your instructions. So everything we said before. You're giving the instruction of role prompting, how they're supposed to act. Then you're feeding in the knowledge base right here with the menu. And finally, your responses. And now let's submit and see what happens. Okay, so, okay, hi, I was wondering if you offer, okay, I might just add a message as a user. Hello. And see what happens here. How can I assist you today? Are you interested in making a reservation or learning more about our menu or special events? I want to make a reservation. Okay. Yeah, and it's doing, you know, what it's supposed to do in terms of that. To guests, do you have gluten-free pizza? Just to double check, and that's kind of why iteration, you know, making sure it's going to respond the way you intend to. Unfortunately, we don't have gluten-free pizza options at the moment, but we do offer salads vegetarian. Do you have any special events? And there we go. So is it hosting? Yeah, it is Friday at 8 p.m. That's what we fed it. And yeah, and it's including the menu and so forth. So anyway, it's just to give you a sense of how you would think about building your own chatbot with your own knowledge base for your own product or service. I'll stop sharing. So I know we're like 2 minutes in. I don't know, whoever's left.
I'm going to stop recording now.